relationship.
So we could end the podcast with defy your mentor and you're going to be a success. Moral of the story.
Fight
Boom.
the man. Welcome to the Mentorship Mindset. I'm Brian, this is Isaac, and our goal for this podcast is to showcase our mentor-mentee relationship and unpack the dynamics of the mentorship experience. Today on our first episode, we're talking about music, sports, and the upcoming conference season.
We are here, the new revamped, the Mentorship Mindset.
Yeah.
Hopefully have some cool guests, but this is episode 1, so let's see how it goes. We're going to let it rip.
Yeah, we are going to let it rip. I'm excited. We've been talking about this for a while now. Before the new year, I think.
So, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
it's
So
good to be here.
It is. Well, why don't we start off? Do you want to introduce yourself to who's ever watching? Maybe that one person that's watching?
Totally. Hello, I'm Brian. I'm a BCBA. I've been a BCBA for about getting close to a year and a half now. I've been working with Isaac for 4.5 years. I'm really excited to be starting the mentorship mindset together because I think it's just such an underserved topic that really is like the glue that holds so many of our professional and some of our personal relationships. So I'm happy we get to shine a spotlight on it.
Yeah, I'm happy you're here too. And my name's Isaac. I've been I've been working in behavior analysis for 26 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a BCBA since, I can't do the math, but it's been since 2005.
Mm-hmm. So
just a little bit. I've really enjoyed my career so far. And one of the things that I enjoy the most is mentoring young professionals, mentoring any professional that I have the ability to mentor or the privilege to mentor, I should say. And that's kind of where the story begins, I think, with us. I don't know if you want to share the story of like how this whole thing started and, you know, kind of how we came up.
Yeah. So you interviewed me when I came on to BDA, Brett Denovian Associates in California. And like we would say hi to each other. We quickly found that we both really loved playing guitar. And I think back then, because that was closer to 5 years ago, you were more at the beginning of your guitar journey, right? Yeah.
I still am, by the way. I always say I'm in the beginning, so that way there's no expectations, but.
Yeah. That's playing it safe. I mean, I'm just getting comfortable saying like intermediate maybe, and I've been playing since like before I was a teenager. So as I was getting closer to becoming a BCBA and I was doing some supervision, those things were happening professionally while I was having more developments in my personal life. I was engaged at that point to my now wife, and I was feeling a lot of the pressures of kind of being a breadwinner of sorts and like a provider and those things. So while I was getting really fantastic mentorship and very like specific to like clinical ABA stuff from plenty of coworkers and supervisors, I really didn't have like the male mentor figure that I was looking for at work. And everybody pointed me in your direction. They were like, you should really talk to Isaac about this. So, I mean, I think I just knocked on your door in your office and kind of laid all of that at your feet. And I said, I am looking specifically for this. And here's where I'm kind of struggling a little bit with some of the things in my personal life and how there's a lot of overlap with being a male professional. And that's how it started. And now we have like regular powwows and hangouts to kind of talk about all these things. So I'm super appreciative that like you like took me under your wing in that sense very quickly. So
yeah, well, I think that's a cool story because it reminds me of one of the things that I talk a lot about in mentorship, which I commend you for your bravery of, I mean, you literally knocked on the door. You know, I say it figuratively to open the door, you know, but you know, you reached out, and I think that's the first step in that mentorship journey is to reach out to somebody that you feel can provide mentorship or support, and then for me, the honor and the privilege of being able to be in that role and to see what kind of value I could provide to you. So I think it's been cool. And I think that that's how, the mentorship process starts and the relationship starts in terms of getting to know each other and getting to know your journey and where you want to go career-wise, both, as a BCBA and here at BDA California. And I think through discussions like that, opportunities open up, and one of those opportunities, happen to be this podcast that we're in, right?
Yeah.
So, but it starts off with knocking on the door, and it's one of the things that I talk a lot about. It's you have to set the occasion and create that opportunity for yourself to seek out, those that you think could provide value to you and to provide mentorship, knocking on the door is something that, opened it up, and here we are, so for those listening, knock on that door, ask for mentorship is what I always say. You have to, seek that out. So
yeah, it's so true. And I mean, it was very highly reinforcing from the jump. I think the thing that I was impressed with the most is, of course, as a mentee in this relationship, there's definitely the feeling of like, okay, I'm coming to somebody to give me guidance, help me out, all of these things. But I was really impressed that, like, again, even though we had known each other for a few years up until that point, I don't think we knew all that much about each other. And just as quickly as I was ready to share about myself, you shared about yourself. You humanized that experience immediately, because I think it can be challenging being in the mentee seat of like, I'm bringing all of this to you, help me out. But the more that you shared with me about your journey to get to where you are, it definitely just put me at ease, and really humanized it. So I didn't, it let me step out of myself a little bit and say like, oh, this is a human experience. We all go through these types of movements in life. And most of us who are in this kind of position have been on either or both sides of a mentee and a mentor in this relationship.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is something that is really key to building that mentorship relationship, so to develop safety and trust in mentorship, there's got to be mutual sharing, and I mean, you kind of mentioned something that I think is really important of, you feeling comfortable and this mentorship relationship unfolding because, I think you labeling this relationship as, mentorship, and if I happen to be a mentor to you, it's something that I can't label. I can't say like, I'm your mentor and you're my mentee. It's something that, I think can't be imposed on the situation. It's something that the mentee, if they're getting that type of support, is something that, would then label the relationship as mentorship and me as a mentor, so I think all of that, it's part of the work that we do, and the vulnerability, the being able to share, is something that's really important to this mentorship relationship. So I'm super honored and blessed to, have the opportunity. And I think along the way, it's kind of cool that there's some common interest, and so it's not just all talking work. There's
definitely not.
there's other things that we dive into, like sports and guitar and, things that are of mutual interest. So I'm sure that we'll dive into that at some point, either today or in future episodes of the podcast. But, we'll go all over the place and see, as mentorship discussions oftentimes do.
Yeah. Well, now that we're in this setting on a podcast where it is for at least right now, it's not literally just the two of us. There is an audience. So I think it's appropriate to let them in on some of those common interests, and especially I think dropping the hammer on the sports thing because, there's a lot to get into there.
That's right. As you mentioned, we're both fans of guitar,
Mhm.
right? So it's something that we talk a lot about, and we've even had a jam session, so that's
Yeah,
that was a cool experience. It's almost like a reverse mentorship because
Mhm.
I'm at the early stages of my guitar playing. You've been playing for a lot longer, so I learned from you when it comes to guitar playing.
I really appreciated that first jam session because it really, really felt like we were on exact equal footing, like just coming together to play music. We have some overlapping music tastes,
Mhm.
but I think we also have pretty different music tastes
Yeah.
as well. So I have this image of me, like, I think setting up, I'm like blaring Guns N' Roses in the background or something, because that's more of like that's not my favorite music, but like, it's like, okay, this is my, like, I'm getting amped up
Yeah.
kind of music.
Yeah, you're getting warmed up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we totally transitioned into like playing like much more like singer-songwriter stuff, which I actually enjoy playing and writing myself, but I just have that image of like you coming in and I'm like, hey man, like, let's go. And you just hear like Slash ripping away in the background. And we're both like, yeah, we're not doing
Right.
that.
Hey, we could do those monster ballads all day, man. I grew up in the 80s and that was my jam. So I wore out my monster ballad CD. So you tell me, we could do
I love
we could
that.
do some monster ballads.
We did hit Every Rose Has Its Thorn though.
We did. We did.
Yeah,
There you go. There's some
we
piano.
harmonized some lines too.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think you're as good of a singer as you actually are, by the way.
Confidence when it comes to singing is not my forte, so I'm still working on that. But I'll venture into that.
Yeah, totally.
Once in a while, and you never know. Maybe I'll get the confidence, and I mentioned that one of my goals is to gig.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that's a goal, but it's to be able to have the courage to get up on stage. So one of these days, it's going to happen.
I was working with a learner, a teenage guy, and he's a huge Metallica fan, which I was like, this is amazing. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And like, he was excited. He saved up money, got his first guitar and all of that. So we would play some songs together, and his mom came with like her mini SUV, set up their trunk that had like a power source to it. And we plugged in amps and everything, and we played For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Okay.
So he had his guitar, I had my bass. I've gigged. I've more for singing and being a front man, not as much for playing, but I still have some experience there. And it was this guy's first time playing music in front of people.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's a musician knows what happens the first time you get up in front of people. You typically don't hit it out of the park.
Okay.
And he did really, really well for his first time, but like, I was excited. His mom was excited when we finished, and he really wasn't. And he was like, oh man, like, oh, I messed up here. I messed up there. And I patted him on the back. I was like, welcome to your first gig. Like, it can't go any other way than that. Even, and I mean, mistakes like that, it's like, who cares? I think you saw the video of me performing that song I wrote for my wife at my wedding. I messed up a bunch. I had to like take a full 2-second pause at one point. I tried playing a guitar solo. That didn't go well. But that's not the stuff that people remember anyway. And the feeling of getting up on stage and playing with others and stuff, it's just the best. So
that took some courage to get up on your wedding day. I remember my wedding day. I was an emotional wreck. So that's kudos to you, man, just getting up there.
Well, it helped that it was our second wedding. So we were already married. Right. So that helps a little bit. Yeah.
So multiple weddings, you're like adding trials and you're feeling comfortable playing.
Yeah, exactly. And now the family joke is, because now we've had 2 weddings. I'm going to record that song, sell that song, and with the millions I make from that song, we'll have an even bigger 3rd wedding.
There you go. Just keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Keep on renewing the vows, and it's going to be awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're going to talk quite a bit of like guitar and stuff, and not just like the interests of music that we have, but kind of like the process of learning guitar. Right. There's a lot in there, and you and I can go on about the similarities between or the shared modalities and learning with like ABA and learning
Yeah,
music
exactly.
too.
I think to the spirit of this podcast, I'm in this music program that's called Fearless Fretboard. The instructor's Eric Davis. So just want to give a shout out to the Fearless Fretboard.
There we go.
He uses a very behavioral approach to teaching, and I've even pointed it out to him. Maybe we'll have him be a guest in one of our podcasts.
That'd be
but
awesome.
It's like the note memorization part of it. It's just doing like trials and repeated trials over and over, to get that memorization of all the notes on the fretboard, which is one of the main goals of the curriculum, along with the shaping of different techniques and different concepts of the guitar. Essentially it's kind of the music theory stuff. That's the foundation of how you play music, so all of that is very much scaffolded into different modules, and you're kind of learning different concepts, one on top of the other, until you kind of build this repertoire of guitar playing. So it's very behavioral. And it's one of the things that, I've been enjoying diving into. It's kind of a new skill that I'm trying to, get into to improve my guitar playing. But it's, it's been a very big behavioral process, and it's, part of, the mentorship that I'm getting right now in guitar playing, so.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think learning music is almost entirely behavioral. I mean, so much of learning and practicing music is chaining.
Right.
So for listeners who might not be aware, chaining is the idea of is having a bunch of smaller steps in the process, all being connected together. Depending on what you're working on, it could be referred to similarly as a task analysis. But with chaining, it's the idea of how we're putting those components together. So there's forward chaining, which would be, okay, you're doing the steps in order. And then there's backward chaining, which is working with the step that is the most difficult and then filling out afterwards, right? Am I doing a decent job of explaining that?
Yeah. So backwards chaining, which is funny enough, in learning different licks, right? I'm aware of how much they use backwards chaining, starting with the last step first, and then adding more steps until you get to the beginning of the skill, and then you're able to perform the whole skill. And I said that very, very much in an abbreviated way, but we do that in learning the guitar, where we start with the last little piece of the lick, and we learn it, and then we add, the next piece, and then we keep on going in a backwards fashion until we learn the entire melody that we're learning. So backwards chaining is a big part of learning music that I've experienced, especially in this program. So that's been kind of an eye-opening experience.
Depending on how well you want to learn a song or a lick. Right. If you are content with playing the song 80%, 85% correct, but there's that one part of the song, or that one change, or that one lick that kind of gets muddy. Right. If you're content with that, more power to you. Right. That's great. But if that's what you're struggling on, forget the other stuff that you already know you have under your fingers and under your belt. Like, focus intently on getting that other part down. Slow it down. Right. Play it over and over again. Then, take a break and then come right back to it. Really get the muscle memory down so that you can come back and play the whole song fluidly. Right. And yeah, that's entirely something that I've learned in ABA. And the moment that I started seeing that, I was like, oh, that's how I work through songs. That's how I work through guitar and bass. So
very much.
Yeah, it was cool to kind of connect those things, and then kind of reverse engineer it into like some of my programs at work, some of my ABA programs that I'm like, oh, well, really, if the learner I'm working with really gets us 90% of what we're doing, but is missing that crucial 10% of this entire task, we don't need to practice the other 90% anymore. That's fine. That will come as naturally as riding a bike at this point. Let's really focus on that 10% that's spotty and break it down, slow it down until we're confident that we can put it all together. Right,
exactly. And then that forms the entire skill that you're trying to teach.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So guitar playing, that's a common interest. And, it's one of the things that we talk about in mentorship is, building that relationship, and relationships are formed off of common interest. I know another common interest, we talked about sports, and, you're a Dodger fan like me, which I love, right?
Don't
you
say
bleed
that.
blue. You bleed blue.
I bleed a different shade of blue.
My gosh, here we go.
I bleed navy blue because I'm a big Yankees fan.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they just had a World Series, and
did they?
And it didn't go Navy Blue's way. It went the other's way, but that's part of what happens. So so we're on different sides of the teams that we like, but we like the sports, and we are able to banter about that, and
which definitely, that definitely helps bring us closer in the context of our relationship too. Yeah. Like that fun banter about it too is awesome, and I'm itching for when I can dunk back on you when this upcoming October, which is a long time, or November, which is far away, right. But maybe we flip the script. But it's going to be tough to out Yankee the Dodgers right now, because they are the new Yankees.
That's right.
For sure.
We are the 1990s Yankees. We're doing the same thing. We'll see. But I'm excited to get the season started, and let's see how it goes, right?
Yeah.
There's no guarantees. No matter how much money people spend or teams spend, there's no guarantees.
You're right. There's no guarantees. Thank goodness neither of us is a Mets or Angels fan, though. For that we can be grateful.
Right.
I do respect the Dodgers. I don't like them very much right now, but I have respect.
And likewise, I'm actually a Jeter fan. I loved how he played. I love how he played the game. I love everything that he did. So I could say that.
Yeah.
I like Jeter.
People either love or hate the guy. But I always think of Jeter on like the same level as Kobe Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
Those two guys just seem like they've tapped into almost the exact same thing. Right. I think Kobe did it a little more overtly and was more open about his whole process of Mamba mentality and doing all of that. Jeter had a lot of that too. And for them to do it in the same era is pretty wild.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
A current topic, something that just happened in the sports world that kind of ties into mentorship a little bit from what I've read and heard. The Lakers just had a blockbuster trade with the Dallas Mavericks, and are getting Luka Dončić, and for his name is
for Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis, yes. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that, because people are trying to understand why would the Mavericks trade such a superstar, and his conditioning came into play and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also saying that now playing with LeBron has the ability to level up the players that they're around. So I kind of equate that to like mentorship, right? To inspire this superstar, Luka, to maybe improve the conditioning or serve as a role model of somebody that's been able to play for a very, very long time and super duper successfully. So who knows? I'm hoping that, not only is he a natural superstar and is going to come to the Lakers and hopefully do great things, but hopefully he'll also be able to learn from LeBron and level up his conditioning and be able to play for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think there's a chance that Luka doesn't learn from LeBron. And I know one thing that we're excited to, dive into across these episodes is mentorship can look so different.
Right.
Every relationship is unique. Every person has their own communication style, teaching style, learning style, all of this stuff. And LeBron has a history of mentoring other players on his team, when he's the senior in that dynamic. I think in the case of Luka coming to the Lakers, especially, at this point in LeBron's career, this will be kind of like, I'm sure Luka will be accepting of it. He is very open about being a huge LeBron fan. But this seems like kind of like, while both parties want to be in it and are working towards the same goal, seems a little bit of like this is a by hook or by crook mentorship situation where first off, the trade makes sense for both teams, I think. But if the Mavericks didn't have anybody who was going to motivate Luka to condition better and exercise better and all of that stuff. I have this vision that LeBron is going to, start by saying, okay, here's your chance to like do it willingly.
Right.
If not, I am going to drag your sorry butt over the finish line and make sure that, because this isn't just about you anymore. This is about me, and this is about the whole team, and LeBron's years are numbered. Most people don't think he's going to win another title, but he certainly wants to. So there is value to that type of mentorship relationship where it's like there's a bit of sink or swim to it. And that's definitely how I see that going. I think for Anthony Davis, who teamed up with LeBron, they have a very good friendship. Now I have this chip on my shoulder to prove like, you should never have traded me. Nobody should want to trade me ever again. I have something to prove now, in the context of this huge thing, which for people listening who aren't about basketball, this is already being hailed as one of the biggest just sports trades in American sports history, period. So looking at this guy who I think is 31, it's not, maybe in basketball that's a little bit older, but in life that's not that old. Now he's going to take what he's learned from that relationship and kind of put it on himself to say, okay, here's what I can do now, partly as a result of this mentorship relationship that is not the same as it was for the past like 5 years. Yeah.
So I guess we'll see the results of that blockbuster trade. Hopefully, it seems like both teams are going to benefit, maybe one in the short term and the other in the long term, but we'll see. And I think mentorship is going to play a big role in both those two names, Luka and AD. To kind of pivot, typically the start of a new year is a start of New Year's resolutions. I'm curious to see if you have any New Year's resolutions that, are maybe some driving goals for 2025 that you have.
So I have tried something a little bit different. So we call it New Year's resolutions. I was listening to a podcast and I don't remember the name or who it was right now. And they were talking about just how much they hate the month of January. I don't know if I feel that strongly about it, but there is something where I notice in January, I really take the foot off the gas. It's like we just got through this big holiday season. My second wedding was at the end of October too, so really steamrolled from then right into Thanksgiving and the holiday season. January, I said, okay, I can exhale. I can take a break. I'm not expecting to be just like spending all the money and the time that I've been spending. So now I'm coming back to, okay, let me try to set a solid goal for the year. I want to, in a very general sense, try my best to dedicate this year to my health in general. It's something that, physical health, emotional health, mental health, I've actually done a pretty good job at taking care of, but, could still use some fine tuning there. Spiritual health. Those are all things that like I am occasionally mindful of. Yeah. And then quickly life catches up with me and I kind of like put them to the side and say, there's going to be more time for this, or there's going to be, I'm going to have more bandwidth in the future to focus. But I like the idea of committing 1 year to health. And I think what I'm going to do is track it all, keep tabs of what I am doing for all of those different areas of health, and keep a running tally and say how many times in a day or in a week am I doing something that is committing to my health. Right. So how many times am I exercising? Yeah. How many times am I journaling? Right. Just to get things out. I am, full disclosure to, I think I probably told you and to the audience as well, I love a good cry. Sometimes it is just what the doctor ordered for me. So even like taking note of stuff like that, because it's so easy to get swept up in the everyday aspects of life that like it's so easy to push that stuff to the side, or to say like, oh, that's like a lower priority thing, or that wasn't as big of a deal, so like move on. But for me, if I commit myself to a year of like engaging in behaviors or activities contributing to my health, then it's like, no, actually, like, let yourself cry over like I can literally cry over spilled milk. That's okay to do sometimes, right? So that is generally what I'm thinking. I'm still working on something that's a little more specific so I can really like measure it.
Yeah.
But the idea of coming out of 2025 into 2026, I want to say I really committed to my overall health this year.
I think health is an obvious, great thing to focus on. And you started doing that. I was going to encourage you to pinpoint, you know, what that means. And when you said exercise, journaling, those are really great pinpoints. And then, you know, how often do you want to do of those things, you know, and then you're kind of turning them into goals. And then you could gauge like how you're doing based off of those goals. So that's, I would encourage you to really like pinpoint specifically what you mean by health, you know, and then put some measurement to it. It's like, how often do you want to do those things? How often do you want to journal per week, you know, and then see how you're doing.
I've done things like this in the past where I've operationalized exactly what these things look like. So that's more ABA speak for listeners who aren't as familiar, but really but when I say operationalize, making a very clear definition to like, what does it mean to exercise, right? There was a while where I was actually taking stock of just various activities that I thought were just generally positive in my life. So it was like exercise, it was playing guitar, things like that. So I would say, okay, exercise for 30 minutes, play guitar for an hour, things like that. And that's all really good and is a great goal. But I've been also trying to be kinder to myself and say, you know, it's okay if you, on a certain day, you try to exercise, it doesn't go as planned, and you only get that 15 minutes of exercise instead of a half hour. Whether or not I, you know, check that off or I write a tally for that as doing it, it's still absolutely moving in the right direction. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And it's, you know, a reminder to anybody who's listening too, that like, it is important to like pinpoint and define what you're doing in so many ways. At the same time, just because you don't reach that full mark in that moment, nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to like, you know, write off as like, I didn't get this thing done.
For sure. I think being kind to yourself is an important part of being healthy, you know, and even if there's an approximation towards the goal that you're striving for, that's a step in the right direction, like you said, instead of not trying it at all. Right. So, you know, I think the act of pinpointing and setting those goals at least gives you a mark of what you're aiming for, but sometimes we won't hit it, you know, and that's okay.
Totally.
You know, and you could look at the collection of data for the year and just see how you've done overall. And, you know, if you're trending in the right direction, that's a great thing. So, I'm curious to check in and see how that's going.
Oh, definitely. We'll make these check-ins like public too. Like, well, let's expand the accountability, right?
For
like
sure.
Not just you holding me accountable, and me holding accountable for your New Year's resolutions, which I'm excited to hear next. But also for the audience too. That's gonna keep me going as well.
So next time, you know, we'll see what you've pinpointed as part of health and see if some goals have come up from them, and then how you're doing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. We won't do like episodic weigh-ins though. We don't need to do that.
Right. Yes.
All right. So with that, Isaac, what are your New Year's resolutions?
Well, you know, I think about you know, family is like one category that I like to focus on. So in the area of family, one of the things that I'm really striving for is increased quality time per week with my family, my wife and kids. And to me, you know, I have 2 college-aged kids, so they're both getting super, super busy, you know, and even if they're at home, they're studying or they're at work or doing some other stuff. So even just finding quality time together is really hard. My wife is also a behavior analyst and she's busy herself, so I would love, a goal for me is to at least have one quality meal together where we get to check in and hear how everybody's doing, and to have quality conversation, which is a big goal of mine. I'm not the biggest talker at times, so I want to just be able to have, quality conversation, be able to at least once a week check in and see how everybody's doing, so that's one of my goals, is to be able to do that, because even that has been really, really hard recently with just their busy schedules. I can't think of the last time we all sat down to have a meal because either one's working, the other, it's all broken up. So I want to be able to find that rhythm to be like, we're going to commit to this day per week to have, whether it's a lunch or whether it's dinner, and then go off of that. So that's one of my big family goals.
For sure. I was going to ask you, like, that sounds really tough with college age kids. I mean, but also at the same time, super doable, super attainable. Like there might be times where your college age kids want to skirt past some of those quality time.
They typically do. They're at that age.
For sure. Well, it's also the dynamic of doing that while they're still at home or close to home. I had the benefit of being across the country from my parents when I went to college. So it was like, hey, we're all on board for this quality time because I'm coming back like twice during the year.
Right.
But it's a lot more challenging, as they're getting into their things and, expanded social life and responsibilities too. But at the same time, I know the quality time that you want to set is obviously great. And I know we've talked about too, like also just setting the stage for the moments where they are ready to like have the quality time, or they are ready to come to you and be like, hey dad, like whatever, like they vent or they need you. Maybe they don't directly say, dad, I need you, but
well, it's funny because I've shared with both kids that I dream of the day where they actually initiate and say, hey dad, can you help me out with, oh my gosh, I dream of that scenario, because, we talk about mentorship. I think my biggest goal is to be able to be a mentor to my kids, and right now they're in late teens and early adulthood. So right now they don't want to be bothered. And I think mentorship for them, they actually labeled it when so I impose mentorship on them. And
well, they're your kids. You're allowed to do that.
and they've labeled it as TED Talks, right? Dad's TED Talks. So they kind of roll their eyes and stuff, but I know they listen because it comes out, in different places where, some of the things that we talk about, but I have told them that, the day they're in a position, and if I've earned the ability for them to feel safe enough to come to me and say like, hey dad, what do you think of blank? Like, oh, that to me is everything. So so that is a life goal, is for them to see me as a resource and see me as a guide, and to feel comfortable enough to come and pick my brain, and whatever I could offer, just the act that they would want to know, my thoughts on something to me would mean a lot. So
for sure.
So that is one of the things. The other category is guitar, right? So one of my other goals is to complete that Fearless Fretboard program, and continue on. And one of the things that the teacher talks about in the program is quality, consistency, and fun, right? So to increase my quality of practice, my consistency of practice, and my fun that I have. So, and as I've mentioned in that program, quality of practice is probably my biggest struggle, where I feel like every day I have the guitar in my hands, but is it quality practice versus just noodling or messing around, so my goal is to increase my quality of practice and have a daily practice routine. It does compromise my family goal, so that's always the balance, right? Is, family is important. So I want to be there and not take away from my time with them, but, to be able to establish a consistent routine that's tolerated by the family, to be able to have quality practice, is going to be a big goal of mine, so I could keep on trending up when it comes to my guitar playing.
Right
with
on.
the goal of gigging, right? So
Mhm.
that's gonna.
But it sounds like your guitar learning goals and your quality time with family goals doesn't sound like they conflict with one another, right?
No, I mean sometimes, because sometimes if my guitar playing gets obsessive, then it's like, hey, dinner's ready, come up, type of thing.
Yeah,
So
it's like, no, I'm in the groove.
Right, right. And sometimes, when you get into the groove, you're like, no, don't get me out of here.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'm sure I could find a balance where I can make it all work.
Yeah.
And then the last one is just professionally to continue to support seeing the states that I support here at BDA, California, Texas, and Oklahoma, continue to grow their profitability, continue to grow their quality of service, continue to grow the staff members that we have here in terms of just continue to provide mentorship and support so that they grow, so growth for the states that I'm involved in is something that I strive for. And that's one of our big goals for this year is to drive growth in the states that we're in. Because I think we have a superb team that can do that. We're in a really great position to be able to drive growth. So we got to now capitalize on, the position that we're in. So that's one of the things that, we're focused on here professionally.
Totally.
At BDA.
It's been cool to see the growth that we've had here in California at BDA California in my time here. Because all of a sudden I look around and I'm like, I've been here longer than for sure most people at BDA. For our audience members, I came to BDA in August of 2020. So it was still like, 2020 pandemic is still pretty fresh. And this was my first introduction to ABA at all. And I started here, I guess the common term outside of BDA would be behavior tech, or here we're clinical associates. Right. And for me to go through my own professional development, become a BCBA while we opened our clinic.
Right.
That clinic opening was fun. That was awesome. I love the image of you with the big scissors. Cutting the ribbon.
Right, where I struggled to cut the ribbon.
Yeah. I don't remember that. I just I just remember I
didn't struggle.
No,
it was very smooth.
There was no struggle.
No.
From that to seeing my colleagues also grow, develop the relationships here, it has been really cool and really, really rewarding. So yeah, I'm super excited to see what this year brings. I mean, I don't know as much as what's going on in Texas and Oklahoma other than what you occasionally tell me, or what I hear from some of our other coworkers, but I think we're ready.
Yeah, I do too. So I'm excited for that. So that, those are some of my New Year's resolutions, and I'm happy to report out in future episodes to see how things are going.
Yeah. Have you seen, Isaac, the Bob Dylan movie that's out, A Complete Unknown, with Timothée Chalamet?
No, I have not.
Okay. I thought there was a really cool mentorship dynamic going on in that movie. The movie starts with Bob Dylan coming to New York City in, I believe, 1960, maybe 1961. It's really Pete Seeger who takes Bob Dylan under his wing in like the world of like folk Americana music, with the idea of like Bob Dylan's going to revitalize this genre of music and make it popular. Sure enough, that's exactly what happens. And as Bob Dylan is getting more popular and more cynical as a person, he is figuring out that he wants to start leaning into some of the more popular music sounds that are happening around him, right? So by the time he gets popular in the folk music world and it starts to tip into, oh, now Bob Dylan is like a somewhat of a household name. Yeah. Still before the Beatles come to the US. It's like 1963-ish, and the Beatles come, play Ed Sullivan and all of that in 64. Pete Seeger, at least in the movie, is trying to like shape him back into his folk music box. And Bob Dylan really doesn't like that. Yeah. And the movie culminates with the 1965 Newport Folk Festival, the very famous folk festival where Dylan goes electric.
Okay.
And, you know, he has this moment of like, he has for sure let his mentor down. But at the same time, he's also changed the course of American popular music forever. But I thought it was really interesting because it was an example of like Pete Seeger trying to cultivate his mentee to something that is like mutually very important to them. But the moment Bob Dylan is like, oh, you're trying to like essentially tell me what to do with my music, like I'm not having any of that. And then that spurs him to go in the opposite direction. So I thought it was interesting because, you know, talk about mentor-mentee relationships. It is beneficial to both parties, but I thought it was cool that Bob Dylan as the mentee basically slips from his mentor, and it winds up being like this incredible thing for Dylan and for pop music too. So I thought it was really fascinating, and it definitely plays into like, that's a different kind of mentorship relationship.
So we could end the podcast with defy your mentor and you're going to be a success. Moral of the story.
Fight the man.
I know we should probably start landing the plane a little bit. And I know we were talking about, you know, conference season being upon us, you know, and we have at the end of this month, CalABA, you know, here in Pasadena.
I'm so excited.
I know we're
pumped. It's going to be my first one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. All right. Cool. So that's always a spectacle for those that are here in California. That's kind of our big reunion and conference. So I'm excited for that. There's several presentations I'll be part of. So I'm actually busy trying to finalize those presentations, but you know, it'll be cool to see colleagues and friends and to see you out there enjoying your first CalABA.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm so happy that, you know, just this first experience, I just get to be a spectator, and I shouldn't say only a spectator, but I get to watch, I get to learn, I get to meet new people. You know, I'm grateful to work at our clinic a lot. And I've been recently working in a local high school district. So I get to see a lot of different people. But of course, as we know, the field of ABA can feel very small for some people. You know, if you're just working in home cases, your world is a lot smaller. So I'm excited to just meet all kinds of people who speak the same language, who experience so much of what I do on a regular basis. And that being the initial point of connection means that I think everything else is just going to be great. I'm excited to like meet new friends, like let alone network and, you know, network in a more professional sense. That'll be great. But like, I'm actually eager to make some friends and like see what kinds of relationships come from that.
For sure. That's a good place to go, and a good place to go and listen to some outstanding speakers and those that are driving the field forward and stuff. So I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of it. And then there's APBA happening at the end of March in Dallas, Texas. So shout out to APBA and the board members and Tyra Sellers and everything that they're doing. I encourage people to go out there and attend APBA. It's a great conference. There's a CASP happening, you know, right around that time. There's ABAI happening at the end of May in Washington, D.C.
It's in D.C. this year. Cool.
Yeah. For those of you listening who are behavior analysts, I encourage you to attend, you know, CalABA and APBA and ABAI if you can. So one
small thing that I'm actually also excited for conference season in general, as a BCBA and ABA professional, I try not to wear clothes that like I'm afraid are going to get like damaged or soiled or anything like that. I am a person who likes to dress up. So now I'm from New Jersey, and I think the stereotypes about like California or Southern California, dress attire versus that of what I'm used to in the Northeast.
Yeah.
I find those stereotypes to be true. So you might see me in what might be considered a little overdressed. But like, I'm excited to like, I get to wear like some like dress clothes. I get to like put on some nice stuff and feel good about how I look and go out there and meet people.
For sure. That's the yearly dress up event.
Yeah.
It's.
I tried to do it for LABA. That happened. How long ago was that now?
That was in October, I believe.
Time flies. That was in October?
It was in October.
Dang.
So we'll have the second annual LABA conference in probably October again.
Awesome.
We're preparing for that. So I'm sure we'll talk about it later. And one of the other things that we got going on through Mentorologist that puts this podcast together is we have the start of our webinar series for 2025. So we have one coming up February 20th with Dr. Fernando Armendariz. Yeah. So he's a really exciting speaker. I actually met him at last year's CalABA, speaking of networking. And he's somebody that, so he was one of the founders of Los Horcones, which is a utopian community in Hermosillo, Mexico. And it's based off of B.F. Skinner's Walden 2 book. So for those of you who have read that book, he opened up a community that, was based off of a lot of behavioral principles. So he's got a lot of history and, we're hoping he dives into it. But if not, we're going to have to invite him as a guest to this podcast and have him talk about all the, inner layers of Los Horcones and this utopian society based on behavioral principles. But he'll be interesting. He's definitely got a strong stance, and I think it's gonna rock some people, which I'm all for.
I didn't know about Los Horcones, and when I just like Wikipedia searched what it was, and I was blown away. Yeah. So listeners, it's Los Los, and then Horcones Horcones. Look it up on Wikipedia. At first, when Isaac was telling me just what you were saying right now, I was like, utopian society, like, what do you mean? And then I actually looked it up. I was like, oh, this is like a real community. Yeah. And I happen to be fascinated in like community structures because we don't have them very much here in the US. And it's fascinating stuff. Anybody who was so integral in creating that type of communal living space based on behavioral science and behavioral principles, just has a wealth of information and incredible perspective to give. So I'm really excited to hear him speak.
Yeah, he's going to be great. So I'm excited for that. And I know we're working on the list of 2025 speakers. We've had some cool developments about that, but we'll talk about that at a next episode. We could give a shout out to our sponsors for this podcast. One of them happens to be the Karma Collection. And I'm actually wearing one of the Karma Collection sweatshirts. In the back, it says behavior analyst for a long time, since 2005. So go check out the Karma Collection website. We'll also be at CalABA. We're going to have a BDA California booth, and they're going to be selling some Karma Collection there. So
very
check
cool
that
stuff.
out.
They've got a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, definitely check it out.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it.
And,
we'll see you episode 2.
Check out thekarmacollection.com for stylish, ABA-inspired apparel that spreads the message of behavior science with every wear. Free shipping on orders over $120. thekarmacollection.com